If you like what you're about to hear, please consider leaving a review, or liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing on YouTube. I don't have a Patreon or enable ads for this, so if you really like Oldex, please do contact Games Workshop on social media or via email and tell them you want me to narrate their audiobooks for realsies. Oldex, Codex Chaos Space Marines, 4th edition, pages 54 to 57. Lucius the Eternal, Typhus, host of the Destroyer Hive, and Huron Blackheart, master of the Red Corsairs. Written by Gav Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore. Narrated by R.J. Bailey. With great thanks to Alistair for donating this copy of Codex Chaos Space Marines. Lucius the Eternal. Many millennia ago, Lucius was a space marine of the Emperor's Children Legion, following his Primarch Fulgrim across the galaxy in the name of the Emperor. He led his bodyguard of assault marines with such passion and skill that Fulgrim honored him with the rank of Lord Commander. Forsaking all experience other than the art of combat, Lucius bore many battle scars with pride, and over time he began to equate pain with success. By the time the Emperor's children were dispatched to challenge the rebellion of Horus, Lucius had cut deep patterns across his face, head, and chest, linking the scars of centuries of battle in a maze of irregular patterns that distorted and deformed his features. His near-constant and self-inflicted flagellation was seen by his fellow Space Marines as a mark of commendable devotion and piety. The truth, however, was far darker. Lucius continued to distinguish himself in the service of his Primarch as the Legion descended into chaos worship. He fought with incredible speed and skill in the gladiatorial contests Fulgrim held when the Legion was unable to visit hell upon an unsuspecting world. He was almost invincible, a force of nature that could not be bested. Lucius remained undefeated until he finally met his match, fighting the infamous Lord Commander Sirius. Lucius's agonizing death was an experience of transcendent pleasure, and Slanesh was loath to let such a promising protege slip into the realm of the dead. Over the next few weeks, the artificer armor Sirius wore began to warp and change, slowly pushing through his skin as a maze of scar tissue. Soon, Lucius had emerged completely, and all that remained of his executioner was a screaming, writhing face, subsumed for eternity into Lucius's armor. Thus it is that Lucius stalks the galaxy as an arrogant and sadistic slaughterer who can never truly be killed. Whomever slays him and takes even a moment of triumph from the act will find themselves transforming, slowly and painfully, into Lucius. The armor Lucius wears now writhes with the howling soul remnants of many such unfortunates, affording him endless satisfaction. He is immensely skilled with his chosen weapons, an ornate saber and a demon-infested whip, and they have tasted the blood of champions and kings across the breadth of the galaxy. He leads his war host with unnatural charisma and total confidence, welcoming death with as much passion as he inflicts it upon his foes. Typhus, host of the Destroyer Hive. The most feared of all the Plague Fleet commanders is Typhus. From his ancient warship, the Terminus Est, Typhus has led countless attacks against the Imperium, spreading contagion and misery on scores of worlds. That Typhus has been truly blessed by Nurgle is indisputable. When the Death Guard were trapped in the warp, adrift and dying from the Destroyer Plague, Typhus was the only survivor of the Terminus Est's crew. Rather than dying from the virulent disease that had rampaged through his crew, Typhus absorbed the full power of the Destroyer Plague. His body became a vessel for his ultimate corruption, swelling in size, his organs distending and writhing with foulsome energy. His skin and armor bonded, and great pestilential funnels grew from his body, spewing forth a miasma of destruction. Typhus had become the host of the Destroyer Hive. When Mortarion and the Death Guard settled on the Plague Planet, there were those amongst the Legion who split from their Primarch. Typhus chose to remain with the Terminus Est and recruited a new crew. Several other captains joined him, and Typhus's plague fleet left to find its own fate. For 10,000 years, Typhus has been a blight upon Imperial shipping and worlds around the Eye of Terror. He unleashed Nurgle's rot upon Caradinis VII and Protheus, instigated the Jonas World pandemic, wiped out half the population of Florins with the Red Flux, and has killed millions with the Destroyer Plague. In recent years, the plague fleet of Nurgle has been sighted many times in the area around the Cadian Gate. In its wake, a zombie plague has been spreading. The unfortunate victims of this contagion die a long, agonizing death. But their suffering does not end there. Those that fall to this warp disease do not stay dead. Their bodies are reanimated by the chaos infection, creating plague zombies whose bite carries the disease. Like a stain spreading across the stars, the zombie plague has been carried by Typhus's fleet to more and more star systems. And once it has taken hold, it is almost impossible to stop. Millions have already died and been returned to undeath, and it is likely that Typhus's victims will number in the billions before the plague runs its course. By then, Typhus will doubtless be enacting a new and deadly diabolic plot. Huron Blackheart, Master of the Red Corsairs. Luft Huron, Chapter Master of the Astral Claws, Tyrant of Badab. Huron Blackheart, Master of the Red Corsairs, Lord of the Maelstrom, the Blood Reaver. Two insane and power-hungry enemies of the Imperium at different times. One and the same individual. Huron was critically injured by a melter blast near to the end of the siege of Badab in the fighting inside the Palace of Thorns. The Astral Claws had sworn to fight to the death, protecting their chapter master and their world, but when they saw that Badab was lost, they fought their way past the Imperial blockade in a handful of ships. Once away from the Badab system, they dived into the Maelstrom to evade the pursuing Imperial ships, and so joined the horde of aliens, renegades, and heretics that make the Maelstrom their lair. The tyrant lived. One side of his body had to be almost entirely reconstructed with bionics, the Tech Marines and apothecaries standing long vigil over him, while the Astral Claws ships hung in the shifting gas and dust of the Maelstrom. On the 8th day, the tyrant could speak again, and ordered the fleet to seek a new world to conquer. By the 12th day, Huron could stand and donned his power armor once more. His fanatical followers hailed his recovery as a miracle. But if it was a miracle of any kind, it was a dark one. Huron's limited forces were still great enough to easily overwhelm the first pirate stronghold he found, slaughtering the Corsairs in a matter of hours. The survivors swore allegiance to the tyrant and became his slaves, soon learning to fear his fury. Huron Blackheart was born. With more ships and men, the Blackheart could again embark on building an empire worthy of his rule. Huron's power spread quickly as he welded together a piratical empire of heretics and renegades. His dreaded space marines became the Red Corsairs, after the blood-red color they used to obliterate their old imperial heraldry and symbols. The artifice pleased Huron greatly, and all of the renegade space marines who have since joined him have taken these colors as their own to show their new allegiance. The Red Corsairs have grown into a military force to be reckoned with, and their raids out of the maelstrom have become more frequent and bloody over the decades. Worst of all, the Inquisition has become increasingly disturbed by the number of individual space marines, and sometimes whole squads, who have disappeared, only to reappear in the armies of Huron Blackheart. In recent years, shipping close to the maelstrom has adopted a convoy system. Dozens of merchant vessels, protected by Imperial Navy escorts, make the perilous journey to worlds such as Morgan's Reach, Tartuga 6, Vercruz, and Zathatethus Grand. This has made life more difficult for Huron and his pirates. The Red Corsairs' attacks have become more patient, targeting a straggler or seizing a moment when another threat draws away the naval ships. When Huron himself leads a raid, the Red Corsairs are much more brazen. They have been known to attack well-protected convoys, relying on speed and overwhelming force to take their prizes before the attendant escorts can respond. By these means, the strength of the Red Corsairs grows, and the name of Huron Blackheart is whispered fearfully across a score of sectors. The Badab War. 587.M41. The Astral Claws Space Marine chapter stationed at Badab, keeping the south and western fringes of the maelstrom secure. 723 to 900.M41. Astral Claws submission of gene seed for analysis is infrequent and incomplete. Badab's planetary tithes are not met. 900.M41. The Inquisition sends an armed fleet to Badab. 901.M41. The master of the Astral Claws, Luft Huron, orders the destruction of the Imperial Investigation Fleet as it enters orbit around Badab. Over 23,000 agents of the Imperium killed. Huron declares himself tyrant of Badab and announces the system's secession from the Imperium. 902.M41. First punitive expedition sent by the Imperium is destroyed by the Astral Claws. 903.M41. Second punitive expedition sent by the Imperium against Badab is destroyed. 903.M41. Three other chapters, the Mantis Warriors, Executioners, and Lamenters, pledge their support to the Astral Claws, and the rebellion escalates drastically. 904.M41. A ship belonging to the Firehawks chapter is attacked and captured by Mantis warriors. The Firehawks retaliate immediately, and 5 whole chapters are involved. 905.M41. The Marines errant are recalled from the eastern fringe, but quickly find themselves fully occupied protecting Imperial transports in transit. 906.M41. More loyal Space Marine chapters are brought in to stabilize the situation, and their presence eliminates nearly all threats to Imperial shipping. 907.M41. Orc expansions in the Ultima Segmentum require the redeployment of several Space Marine chapters, and Imperial Navy task forces replace them patrolling shipping routes. The Badab system is blockaded, and its worlds besieged by Imperial forces. Additional chapters are brought in to aggressively investigate worlds occupied by the Executioners and Mantis warriors. 908.M41. The bulk of the Lamentus chapter is caught in an ambush and surrenders after bloody ship-to-ship fighting. Their loss is a great blow to the forces of Huron. 908 to 912.M41. A succession of sieges reduces the strongholds of the tyrant of Badab until Badab is surrounded and invested. 912.M41. The Astral Claws are defeated at the Palace of Thorns, and roughly 200 survivors escape into the Maelstrom with the wounded Huron. 912.M41. Present day. Surviving Lamenters, Mantis warriors, and Executioners, found to be redeemable, undertake century-long crusades of penitence. The Unholy Harbinger. As well as ancient chapter or legion warships, Chaos Space Marines make use of space hulks to travel the warp. Space hulks are massive vessels comprising asteroids, derelicts, and other debris that have been smashed together into a single immense structure by the tides of the warp. Most space hulks drift randomly upon warp eddies, but sometimes Chaos Renegades will activate antiquated engines and employ the power of Chaos Sorcerers to steer a space hulk towards a target. One of the most infamous space hulks is known by the Inquisition as the Unholy Harbinger. The Unholy Harbinger is used as a mobile base for a large contingent of Chaos Space Marines, at various times including warriors from the Black Legion, Death Guard, Sons of Vengeance, Anointers of Blood, and the Pyre. Its first appearance is recorded in a request for aid and advice from the Chloras system, a request that was not met in time, with the Black Templars arriving some 4 weeks later to find the system in ruins and half of its population taken into slavery. The Unholy Harbinger was also reportedly sighted in the later stages of the Gothic War and before the sacking of Garipides during the 3 centuries-long schism in the Segmentum Solar known as the Tournament of Fear. Most recently, the ill-regarded vessel has been sighted several times near the Cadian Gate, presumably drawn to the sector by the launch of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade. It was positively identified by Inquisitor Sevak as part of the invading fleet that attacked Bellis Corona, and is believed to have participated in fleet actions around Dentor. You have been listening to Oldex, Codex Chaos Space Marines, 4th edition, pages 54 to 57. Lucius the Eternal, Typhus, host of the Destroyer Hive, and Huron Blackheart, master of the Red Corsairs. Written by Gav Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore. Narrated by R.J. Bailey. With great thanks to Alistair for donating this copy of Codex Chaos Space Marines. Thank you to Gav Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore for writing the fiction I grew up with. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a review where you found it, or like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, depending how you're listening. I don't have a Patreon or enable ads for this, so if you really like Oldex, please do contact Games Workshop on social media or via email, and tell them you want me to narrate their audiobooks for realsies. This production, like all of Oldex, is entirely unofficial and uncommercial, from an out-of-print publication, is a derivative work with all copyrights owned by Games Workshop, and is a celebration of the hobby and lore I grew up with. If you have suggestions for other old Codex fiction for me to narrate on this podcast, you can comment, contact me on Twitter at rjbailey, or email robertjbailey@gmail.com. Links are in the show description.